Welcome back to Rhyme and Reasoning Book Club. My name is Big Papa. We've been gone for an extra month, but we're coming back this year to hit you every month with a different comic book. My co-host, as always, Victor Jr.
What's up?
and Gabriel Feliciano.
What up, though?
And this month we read X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills. Victor?
All right. So this is God Loves, Man Kills, written by Chris Claremont, and the art is by, hold on, I have to scroll a little bit, by Brent Eric Anderson. And this was written in 1980. It doesn't say in the reprint. It's an X-Men book from the 80s. That's what we're gonna get at here. This is one of the all-time best known X-Men books. Actually, Chris Claremont even says himself that if you want to get into the X-Men, if you ever want to read just one X-Men book in your entire life, this is the one that you should read. And on that, what did you guys think of it? Starting with you, Dad.
I mean, I didn't know what to expect at all.
Okay.
The title kind of threw me off a little. God Loves, Man Kills. So it's got Colossus on the cover. I don't know if this is the original artwork or the original cover, but it threw me off. But the first page of the opening is the one that caught me off guard. And it kind of made me wonder what I was going to read. And it's the first page that says X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills, and it's an insert from the end of the story where it shows Stryker pointing at I forget his name.
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler, and he says, "Human, you dare call that human?" And I was right there. I was kind of like, okay, this book. I don't know what year this is, but I kind of feel like I know what I'm going to read here. And it was what I thought. What I didn't know was from the 80s, though.
That's interesting that's how your guys' starts, because mine actually starts with my version came out. Oh, okay, cool. It's just like a little preview.
It's like I don't know what to call it, not a title page, but the subtitle.
Yeah. Does it start with Kitty Pryde and that one girl, or does it start straight into the story?
Mine starts with the little girl and the little boy being chased ran down.
Oh, interesting.
By the playground.
Yeah, interesting. So my version actually starts with something that they added into the story in 2019, which I didn't really care for, because I didn't really care what the X-Men were doing in 2019. It's one of their dark ages. But it's you guys know Stevie, the black caretaker that Kitty Pryde yells at later on in the story.
Yeah,
it starts with her daughter sitting at her house, and Kitty Pryde approaches her and tells her the story of God Loves, Man Kills.
Oh.
And then it ends with that too.
No, this one started with the little kids getting lynched.
Lynched.
Sorry. Lynched.
Yeah.
Such a bad word to mess up.
Talk. Getting into that, how'd you guys think about this strong opening?
I was like, wow. So, it was pretty not expecting that, I mean, X-Men does have some dark moments and times, but I was just like, okay, wow, that's pretty hardcore. I mean, but it to set the narrative and stuff like that, it does go, it kind of goes along with it, and
I feel like we've been reading some different style comic books, and as we've been reading more and more, they're not as censored as I thought they were. As a father growing and having a 8-year-old get into comic books, I know it was like, "Gay, what the hell are you getting my kid into?" They're not as censored as I thought they were. But the beginning of this one did shock me, because I had to read it twice. And I was like, "Did he just kill 2 kids?" I mean,
the Purifiers did.
Yeah, the Purifiers, and I had to read it twice. I was like, did I skip something? That maybe they're gonna come back later in the story. Maybe they're just faking their death, or I wanted to be positive about the whole thing. And then
Magneto appears.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was
Magneto, because the purifiers, after they kill these children, they hang them up on a swing set and write "mutie" on them, so that the whole world knows that these kids were killed because they were mutants.
You know,
which is very similar to what happened in the 1960s.
yeah,
Exactly.
like and that was the one thing that just reminded me of, like, because you know, you forget how like with the X-Men story, how the social, like, it's very strong on social, like,
Commentary.
yeah, you know, I mean, and it definitely emulates, you know, like where art emulates life and vice versa, you know. And
Hmm.
I kind of forgot about that, you know, I mean, like, and just so that was like, oh wow, you know, but at the same time it's like, okay, I'm digging it. And like for me, I felt also it was a big what's the word, inspiration for X2 in a
Oh
way,
yeah.
you
Okay.
know, with Stryker being in there.
Hmm.
And you know, I mean, you know, I could see that part, you know, like,
Gabe, you,
and
you
his
hit it. You
whole
hit it.
reason.
You hit it right on the nail with that one, Dad. Did you catch that?
For X2.
Yeah, do you remember the plot for X2? It's the one with Nightcrawler in the beginning when he's trying to kill the president.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That whole movie is kind of based on this book.
You know, and William
Oh,
Stryker's hate for mutants because
oh
um,
no. Okay,
a
I'm sorry,
mutant
Gabe.
killed his mutant son, killed his wife and stuff like that, you know. And you know, they kind of
Isn't
changed it around from the book in the movie,
Hmm.
but still,
because
it's just the groundwork is there.
you
Hmm.
know what? That's the one where his striker's son was Archangel, right?
No. It's the one, Stryker's son in the movie is a mutant that is like a telepath, like Charles Xavier, and he's trying to use him to get Charles to do what he does in the book, which is
Oh,
kill every mutant on Earth.
I confused it. I did see the resemblance of a movie, one of the movies where they had Striker, and
Hmm.
Striker was very, very, I mean, very, I don't want to say, I mean, racist, but very,
Mutant phobic.
yeah. And I remember for some reason one movie that popped in my head is when one of the guy that was having so much hatred, his son was a mutant, and
Yes.
he had him like trying to like he wanted him to take a shot.
Hmm.
He wanted him to take the injection,
Yep.
the mutant injection.
It was in the movie it was to control them, like a
Yeah,
drug. It was a drug
Yeah,
to make them subservient
but
to
then
Stryker.
before he took it, his wings came out and he flew out the window.
Oh no,
That's what I thought.
you're thinking about X-Men United.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
That's the third one. That's the one. That was the Cure,
Oh okay.
the
See,
mutant Cure.
that's the one that was Striker too, though, right?
No, that was Archangel's dad, who's
yeah.
Worthington the third, Worthington the second.
See, I confused them, but yeah, I kind of, in my head, I was going for that movie, but
I see.
and just Vic, for we can just kind of explain to people who used to listen to our other comic book club,
Hmm.
and we're going to try a different method. Instead of going through the whole book, we're going to talk about it like kind of like a book review, right?
Yeah,
And then
more organically.
hit a couple certain spots. So just in case people are waiting for us to tell the whole story,
Yep.
we kind of want you guys to enjoy the book in the way we did, but we're going to talk about our favorite spots of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't catch that. I caught it from the wrong movie, basically. So
Yeah, but it's okay. Those early 2000 X-Men movies, they blend together in a good way.
Yeah.
yeah, it was and you know another thing I caught too, Vic, was the X Men that we're watching. You were watching with me here.
Oh, X-Men
Oh,
97?
yeah, and the
Mhm.
involvement of Magneto a lot. They kept popping
Yeah.
in my head.
Yeah, so that actually, although we are changing the format of the show, I am going through the book as we're talking and trying to hit the beats, And first off, the first mutant that we see besides the children who are killed is Magneto. And in a typical comic book, we see our protagonist first. But in this one, we see what you would typically think as the villain, Magneto. And I think his speech is actually, it's haunting. He sees the two children dead. He goes, he gets them off of the swing set, and makes it so that their deaths aren't like, on display for everyone. And he goes, an execution, not the first, far from the last, only this time the victims are children, so young, so innocent, to know such terror and pain, their crime that they had only been born. And for all my vaunted power, I was unable to save them. No more shall die, but those responsible for this atrocity, whatever the cost, however long it takes, I will hunt them down and make them pay. And so I wanted to get into, how did you guys think about Magneto's portrayal in this book? Portrayal.
Me, because I've seen it before, where he's kind of like, I mean, even Stan Lee said, I mean, their goals, especially him and Xavier's goals, are in the same way, just the way they go about it. I mean, I guess he said like Xavier's more like Martin Luther King, and Magneto's a lot like Malcolm
Malcolm.
X. Like, I mean, they both want what's best for for mutants and stuff like that. Even though Magneto, he'd rather, I mean, if he's got to do it through force to achieve it, you know. So I mean, so I mean, he's not necessarily like really a bad guy. He's just, he does whatever it takes to achieve his goals, for his people.
I feel like Magneto is underestimated a lot by the normal fan like me. Before I started reading,
As far
um,
as?
I think they feel like he's not a bad guy, but he's a good guy. But I think they failed to realize his intelligence that he was. I mean, this is somebody who like studied along Professor Xavier.
Yep.
It was not like his dumb friend that was roommate was with. This is somebody
Yeah.
who studied just as much as Xavier and is just as much involved and has it. And I mean, even when everything that he speaks, like even in the show, Victor, in X-Men '97, and in the books that we read, Magneto's lines are never like, "Oh yeah, kill him." No, yeah, no, that's dumb. No, I mean it's usually well written and
Yes.
well said. Like even his little phrase in his little speech there, his dialogue, it's like whoever was right, whoever gets to write for Magneto, they're like the rule is like, hey, he's got to sound smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
really articulate, and
yeah,
he's educated, and he carries himself, even if he's portrayed as a bad guy, he still could, the way he's carried himself as a somebody of intelligence, and to a
and,
certain extent some
and
type
that,
of.
yep, and then sorry, Gibb, and then the example that you gave, I don't know if you said Stan Lee said it or somebody said it or you said it, is like the Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. It's true. I mean, Malcolm X was not dumb. I mean, you listen to some of his speeches; they were just as good as Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
Yep.
He just had a way of responding, and his way was like, "I'm tired of this shit,"
Yep.
Yep.
and I feel like that's what Magneto's at right now, and that's where Magneto is. And in this book, he hints at it continuously, continuously, and not to go too far to the end, but all the way to the last 2 pages.
Hmm.
Yep.
He hints at it, and he says it. You fools, you fools are.
I'll be here for when you're no, I won't mourn when it's your guys' funerals. That's what he
Yeah,
says.
Yep.
and it's just I think Magneto is. I don't know. He's one of those like guys that you're supposed to be like not a fan of his, but you're kind of like a fan of his.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I mean, but the thing is, and you start looking at overall life as well, and not to compare life to comic books or anything. I guess I'm at the age right now where I just like I can understand why people want to be so violent towards violence
Yes.
or ignorance towards ignorance, but Professor Xavier's words at the end, not Professor, sorry, and this is the part I don't want to I kind of want to wait to the end for, but I guess I'll just talk about it now.
Go ahead.
It's his words at the end of that book were just so. I mean, Victor, I don't know if you have it in front of you. I had to look for it, but I felt like it was just like perfect.
I have it here, but I
Go
can
ahead.
also like summarize it a little bit too.
Well, man, if you don't mind, I say we read it. I thought it was very, very good. Let's go for the whole
Okay.
thing. It's not that long.
So it comes after basically Professor X at the end of this book, he was used by Stryker. You know, he was used to hurt his own people, and when they regroup at the end, Professor X feels like his dream is dead. He feels like he can't contribute anymore to his own dream of, you know, mutant and human coexistence. And he goes, Stryker made me a killer, even though no one actually died. The intent was there. I swore long ago that I would see no more X-Men die. If Magneto's is the only means to an end, then so be it. He is bowing out, and he's telling Magneto it's time for you to take the X-Men and do what you've been trying to do. And Cyclops says, I won't accept that, Charles. Granted, times are tough for us, and they'll probably get a lot worse. Granted, we probably could conquer the world, though the cost in blood would be staggering. But don't you see, either of you, we're human too. A different branch, perhaps, but the same basic tree. Such a fundamental shift in attitude can't be imposed. To have any meaning, it must grow from within. You brought us together to fulfill a dream, Charles, one born out of hope and the noblest of human aspirations, and we've sweated and bled, and some of us have died to make it a reality. I am not prepared to give up. The means are as important as to the end, as the end. We have to do this, right or not at all. Anything less negates every belief we've ever had, every sacrifice we've ever made. And that's where it ends with Cyclops.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
does not reflect. I mean, the way everything going on.
It's a great moment of the student becoming the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is, and it with everything that's going on in the world right now. Which I mean, whether we get political or not, it's the way I see things. You
Yes.
know, I don't like answering ignorance with ignorance. I don't like answering hatred with hatred. I rather shame you for showing you my intelligence and my humanity against your ignorance and hatred. You know,
Yep.
and I know it's not the best way, and I know it's not, especially where we came from, Gabe. It's kind of like, hey, you say something to me, fuck you. I say something back. We're gonna go at this, you know.
Yeah.
But as you get older and you have kids and you start seeing the world differently, you start understanding Xavier's point, you know.
Yeah.
And this is coming from somebody who just started reading comic books, though, you know.
Yeah.
And you start seeing Xavier's point, and you start seeing Magneto's, and it's kind of like you want to be Magneto, you want to be, especially if you had his power. Come on,
Oh yeah.
but you want to be Magneto. But then you see, okay, you have a man who can control the world's minds, basically. He can get into you. He can do. I mean, pretty much the most powerful man in the world, right? You know what I mean?
Professor Xavier could make it that no one hates mutants anymore.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yep.
He doesn't, though, because he doesn't want it like organically. He wants it organically. He doesn't want to force people, and it helps make my point to when I tell people all the time that, you know, like, and like I said, we don't want to get too political in this whole thing, but everything going on right now is like, do I agree with the immigrations and everything going on? No, I don't agree with the way people are perceiving it, that they want to be racist and make stupid remarks and make stupid comments and act stupid out there, because you give ignorance a little bit of power
and they go wild with it.
They go wild with it. But there is some sort of understanding behind everything that was going on, as far as we allowed our gates to be opened up, and people came in and took advantage of it. We've had immigration since the day we put the border up. So people have been coming in and out of the country forever. When did it become such an issue is when we started having to pay and put our tax dollars and everything, people take advantage of these things. And I feel like the last, maybe, I don't want to say 4 years because that sounds so political, right? But like the last few years, we've had so many people come into this country. I live at the border. You know, Vic lived at the border. Gabe, you lived here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
when you would cross that border, there'd be so many people just trying to get in, and they would just say, "Oh, I need refuge," and they got let in. And then they got homes, they got plane tickets, they got cell phones, they got, they got debit cards. When I see my son struggling to pay his damn um, student loans off,
Mm.
but these people are getting checks
That
monthly.
you know,
So I'm sorry, Vic, go ahead.
it's all right. It's just that, like at the end of the day, right? That same kind of sentiment is what William Stryker has. The idea that because there are mutant children in the world, that no one is safe. Because at every 13th birthday, a kid has the possibility of blowing up a school. It's the same kind of thought. And I personally don't hold immigrants accountable for me not being able to pay my bills. And when I look at people who are coming to this country for refuge, I see it as comeuppance because of how much America has been destabilizing South America for the past 40 years. These people wouldn't be coming to this country if we didn't ruin their government. And people can say that it's conspiracy or whatever, but it's the fact. It's the truth. We've done so many bad things to the global South that I don't think it's unfair to expect them to come over here and try to seek a better life. And it's not like they are receiving Social Security. They can't.
No, and at the end of the day, Vic, it's let's be honest to the world. Just like this comic book. And Gabe, sorry, we jumped off in something else
Oh
there. Go
no,
ahead.
it's all right because I'm actually in between like both of you where
Yeah,
I,
no, no,
I
and
feel in a
I think I'm
certain
more with
way,
you.
but at the same time it's like, I mean, like, Little Vic and even myself, there's so many opportunities for us not to struggle, but
Yes,
it's all on us also to take advantage of, like, what's there for us and
exactly.
to a certain extent, I mean,
And let's be honest. I mean, the world is a game board. There we have a couple people that play the games, and the
hmm
rest of us have to suffer and deal with it. And these games that are being played in South America, like Victor said, from years ago, this ain't something we're talking about 4 or 5 years ago.
yeah, even
What
before our
Victor's
time.
talking about is talking about, like, the Venezuela war back in the day, and it was the 90s, and then back in the even 80s and 70s, and where United States did all these different things and controlled all this and created the situations. But and at the end of the day, it's you and I that have to
Yep.
deal with it in the streets,
hmm
and that's the part that I guess it sucks because, like I said, there's so much ignorance out there that,
Yes.
let's say, somebody who wants to study and understand it a little more, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But just because Trump says immigrants they should go, fucking Mexicans. I mean, get the fuck out of here, really?
Right.
Oh, even
Yeah.
the ones that kill me are the ones that say fucking Puerto Ricans. We're part of the United States,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But I mean, it's just it's just what I hate the most is, not, like I said, not to get too political, which we already spent a couple of minutes on, is the
Yeah.
ignorance behind people, the ignorance without having to understand. Whether you have a different view, Victor has a different view, I have a different view. The point is that we can sit here and have a discussion about it and
Mhm.
not say, "Hey, fuck that, he pissed me off." No,
Yeah.
it's a point that
And
is
that's the thing with people nowadays, and it kind of goes back to even the comics and stuff like that, where people just don't educate themselves. They don't
Mhm.
take the time. They let somebody think for them or speak for them, and then they're like, you know what, I'm kind of feeling like that, but since I really don't want to put in all the work into figuring out what the real issues or problems are, let me just share this or post
Let
this.
me throw
you know.
something at the target that was painted for me.
yeah.
Exactly.
Or
On both
here's a
sides
big
though
one.
too.
Here's a big one, Gabe and Vic. They're afraid to because they don't want to be criticized.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, the X-Men stood there at the end of this story,
Yeah.
and I mean, and just so everybody knows, back to the book of this whole thing is they basically had to deal with racist about the people with the powers. UN, sorry, I forgot my words slipped my mind.
It's okay. Let me reel it in actually, because I
Okay,
think what I'm about to say is perfect. So, we're speaking about this, people's perceptions and how they can be drawn askew by someone's voice being louder than others. How how did William Stryker do this? What did he use to target mutants, guys?
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were reeling it in. Sorry.
No. This is it is. But
um,
how did William Stryker target mutants and get such a huge following? What did he use
religion.
exactly?
Yep.
So there are things that people use to heighten their cause. In this case, William Stryker used his religion. And you know, getting back into the story, we we meet William Stryker, and we see that he's a man of God. And when you see men of God, typically in fiction, you know that you're in a safe place. I think, at least when I read a book, a comic book, or if I watch a movie, people who spew the words of God, I see as comfort. And maybe that's just how I was raised, and that's how I see it. But then, you slowly start to realize that, holy crap, this guy is actually kind of off his fucking rocker, and he's a racist. He's a specious, actually. And
Yeah, and
go ahead.
the thing is, like, and that might be like worse for somebody that's just reading this, but me knowing that character already, and
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this guy's a reverend now, or they made him a
Oh
reverend,
yeah,
like
because he was a
this.
general. He's a general or something in the movie.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was like, this can't go good, like,
But and to go to that point about being a reverend, a lot of people do see that as a okay. This is my safe zone. My
Hmm.
my priest, my reverend, my pastor. This is my safe zone. But I think in my case or in Gabe's case, growing up in the '90s, um, we seen that safe zone completely be mutilated across
Yep.
media about with priests and everything with kids and that going on. So that kind of took away a little bit from that. But then also you do get to a point where a priest or a person of religion or person who Vic, I always forget this word, but you always remind me somebody who's so far into that subject they consider themselves a um
An
like the
expert. What?
an
A
expert, but there's
fanatic.
another fanatic. There's another word you told me about it. I can't, and I always forget it. Like you can't. Like they try to prove how everybody else is wrong about the subject they know so much about, and they like putting it out there to everybody. Like, oh,
Hmm.
that's not how it was because I remember in 1903. And then there's certain people we know that do that a lot with the sport I like, and it did priests and those people are like that. They get to a point where you can't even have a conversation
Yeah.
with them. You can't have the conversations are called coffee conversations
Hmm.
hmm
are to be. I remember and Gabe, I know you remember this when dad or when my dad or your dad would get together, play dominoes and drink coffee or do whatever they used to do back in the day. Do you really think every conversation they were both on the same page?
oh no,
You know, especially when we're talking about two Puerto Ricans from the island. And so the whole point about having a conversation and discussion is that you can debate back and forth and laugh about it and then
yeah,
call domino. And when you talk to somebody who just has a certain one way belief and a certain one way of thinking, like Stryker in this case, or even
Hmm.
Magneto in this case,
yeah,
Yes.
you
Because
can't
that's an important distinction too. I'm glad you made.
and you can't have either way. Like you sit there and it gets to the point where they start convincing you
Yep.
and they start convincing you, or you're afraid to state your belief in it
Hmm.
because they may have a stronger. Most priests, most religion people, most leaders have a way of speaking that they don't like. Let's say it Gabe's talking. He said, "Yeah, well, this is what I believe," and the leader comes in. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Like right over them and doesn't care, doesn't
yeah.
respect. One thing we do on this podcast, we say sorry to interrupt you. But they have a way of speaking over you because that's what they're trained to do because they know they have to have the voice strong.
Hmm.
And
And that's where, like, I fall into probably a lot of people in the middle, where like I have the ideas, and but it's more not so much afraid of being labeled or scrutinized or ridiculed, but it's just that, that vocal backbone to, like, back up my beliefs, or, like, because I know I'm gonna let somebody overtalk me, and, maybe not, let me get what I feel across, or, and that's where a lot of people fall in.
I'm trying to find that page, Gabe, where we're talking about where it says I don't know if it's Kitty or who. It's at the end actually, where he says, "I have wept over too many grave X-Men. I will not do so over yours." And it says,
Yeah.
"Don't go, Magneto. Stay with us. Help us." And he says, "I cannot fight for that which I do not believe." Kitty is Kitty. Much as I would wish it otherwise. Scott may be right. We might win. For all our sakes, mutant and human, I hope you do. But should you fail, it'll be your turn. It will be my turn.
Yeah.
So I mean, so like even at that point, Kitty's like doesn't want, like she's an X-Men, right?
Yep.
She's been taught by Professor X, but she's like Magneto. He's giving a good point here. It's like the preacher came in and said, hey, this is the way God is, and but her whole life she was taught that she has to go to Catholic school and she has to go do her give her sins on Sunday and everything else. And then another religion came in and said that's not how it's gonna be, and she's like, I don't know which way to go, and she doesn't have her own choice in her, and that's what happens to a lot of us, and that's what happens.
It's also very important that Kitty Pryde is a Jewish girl.
Well, there you go. And I mean, and that I guess to get to the whole point of this conversation that I brought up here, the ending caught me so much about everything going on, and I think it was for being put together in 1980 something, and that it hit me so hard for today's day.
Yeah, it still relates. The message is still there. Whether it was probably back then more with the civil rights movement and stuff like that, to where immigration and all the issues that's going on today, it still emulates it, and you could still relate it. Well, regardless on what side of the fence you are, and that's the whole amazing thing. A freaking 80-page comic book, you know you can, it isn't just like, oh, this shit's make believe, and like, this shit ain't real, and how can you read? Well, you know what, if you actually put some thought into it and effort in reading and stuff like that, you can actually, I mean, you
And,
can
You
gain
learn
a
a thing
lot,
or two.
and just to get to the, I think, well, my point. I don't know. I know we haven't got to our points on this whole thing. Is that, and if you don't mind me, I'll tell mine right now. Is that you have the most powerful man and probably one of the smartest men. Obviously, it's comic book. I know this, right? But I mean, it's telling us one of the smartest men and powerful men. You have a bunch of killers with him, a bunch of badasses. You have Cyclops that can just do anything with his eyes, right? You have Wolverine, the baddest badass of all comic books, right?
A real killer.
Yeah.
Yes. You have, I mean, all these special powers, you have all these things, and a person has educated them enough. I mean, Wolverine has always, and one thing that I like about these comic books and about the movies and about the shows, Wolverine always has the same attitude, and you always wonder, like, what side is he on? What side is he on? But he always comes through and shows that, hey, Professor X I'm with him.
Yeah.
And his little comment at the end towards Magneto there, is you have all these, but they've been educated to not show hate with hate. But if it comes down to it, we can protect ourselves and we'll protect you.
Yep.
But we've been shown to be smarter. Yeah. And that's where I go when I say, a lot of times, like, I won't show, we've had racism our whole lives, unfortunately, even though we were all born in the United States, we're American as Americans, and we have family and friends that are fighting for this country. We've always had people that make stupid remarks towards all of us, and when I hear some of those remarks, it makes me mad. When I was younger, it made me even madder. As I get older now, I just I don't laugh at it because it's not funny at all. I kind of think I feel like the way Wolverine does. I know I can react. I know I can do whatever I need to do, but I've been taught better, and I know better, and my long term actions are way better than what you're gonna have anything to show me.
Yep.
And that's just the way I kind of go about it, and it's very difficult when I hear so much hatred going on. But then what people are not understanding, and I think this is where we differ a little bit, is that like all the things that are going on the other side also it's kind of like the Magneto way.
Yep.
And that's the part that and I'm not saying that we shouldn't respond with anything or we shouldn't do anything, because like I said, I'm kind of in the middle there with Gabe and the whole thought process of this whole thing. But I just feel like we're gonna everybody's gonna the people that are losing is us.
Yep.
The tariffs going on, these airplane crashes. I mean, all these things. The people that are losing is not the people at the Capitol building, because trust me, those planes are well taken care of. The people that are losing are us. When I go to the supermarket today, am I gonna have to pay more for an avocado? Yeah, but they say it's gonna take a couple of weeks to impact us, but still, it's gonna impact us.
And us working in transportation, we see the effects way ahead before a lot of the other people.
If they continue
like
with
the
this game,
general.
if they continue with this game, I see layoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
I've thought about it in my company already. So that's the scary part.
I mean, look at us. We bought Tri-State out and basically had to like thin the herd and keep, basically. I mean, weed out the unnecessary folks, and I mean from both sides, because it wasn't fair for them folks to get bought out and then have to just say like, we don't need your people anymore. So to be fair, it was like, level the playing ground on both sides, and but I mean, you kind of see stuff like that. And
yeah.
but also, to go back to what you were piggybacking, Vic, was the biggest thing with and a lot of people do it now too, but with what Xavier showed the X-Men, I guess, and even with himself, you see it, is restraint. Like,
Yep.
you can do all this. Like, I mean, if he wanted to, like, he can make everybody just, believe, like, he can empower his will onto everyone,
Yeah.
and I mean, how powerful you got to be to not do that.
Exactly.
I mean, that takes a lot of strength, to not be able to, unleash all that onto people.
I think I have a point that it helped yours right there, Gabe.
Mhm.
And it goes back to the story that the education of Xavier and what he taught his kids or his students.
Yeah.
This is the first comic book that I seen more Cyclops take the leadership role.
Yeah.
Okay. In the show we were watching 97, you see him take a leadership role, but he's kind of like confused in that he's trying to figure out what's going on with his girlfriend, not his girlfriend, girlfriend, not girlfriend type, and the kid and everything else.
His wife, his clone wife,
and his wife.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So and even in the movies, even in one of the other comics, Cyclops is always questioning himself. He's not a powerful leader. He's more of a action,
Yep.
And this one, I see him take more of a leadership role, and the trust they had within each other of
Yes.
Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and him. There was when they did the training module where he couldn't. The rule was that Wolverine couldn't cut through the thing.
They couldn't do. They were all assigned something that they could not do, but the others could do.
So it was. I mean, who wrote this? Claremont.
Yeah, Chris
Claremont. When he wrote this, I mean, he was already setting us up.
Yeah.
Why would you put a training module in the middle of a comic book? And he put a training module in, and he was already setting us up to show the teamwork that they were taught.
Mm-hmm.
That they had to work together, and this is the education. Yeah. So what happened at the end of the story when they were trying to get Xavier out of that machine, that chair where he was in?
They're all able to work together,
and they're all able to work together. And then Nightcrawler grabs Wolverine to do that whole phase in, phase out thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Are you ready for this?" And he says, "It's not my first rodeo," type of thing. I don't remember exact words, but he said something like, "It's not my first rodeo." Yep. Because obviously, if you don't do the phasing in and out, they say, comic books, you get nauseous and it's very messes with your nerves. And they do it, and then Cyclops shoots the beam, and then Wolverine said that was pretty close there. and he was like, yeah, but if I didn't do it that way, he would have, Xavier would have read my mind and it would have altered it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that whole thing was all an education from a smart man who's not only teaching them the basics of fighting, he's teaching them the basics of teamwork,
Yep.
the basics of how to live life, and not how to hatred, humility. I mean this comic book was, I mean, like you said, 80 pages.
Yeah.
Let the world read it.
And another thing I want to add also is that, as he knows, as powerful as he is, so does the enemies, or
Yeah.
so does Stryker, and they try to weaponize that,
Yeah.
like
Exactly. The thing that Xavier tries so hard not to do, even though in the back of his head he's always thinking, I can make them like us, I can make them love us. It gets used against him.
Mhm.
You know, the one thing that he's holding back from the world that would truly make the people hate mutants. Because what if one day people find out that, oh, I was made to love mutants? Well, I never had an opinion before that, but now that I know that I was made to, it kind of makes me not want to. You know what I mean? The one thing that Xavier himself has been restraining his whole life since he was 13 years old, when his mutant powers manifested, was used against him, and in the worst way possible, to attack his own people. And yeah, I love that you guys saw the teamwork aspect of this, because that's what X-Men comics are. You know, you read the Avengers because it's a soap opera, and they like to fight each other, and they like to bicker. We read the Avengers in the 80s, the same time that this was going on. Those guys had no teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
They were straight up yelling at each other for doing things on the battlefield, and then like being hateful about it afterwards. But I hope I think you guys got it as you were reading this. The X-Men, you're reading a family that's together.
Well, yeah, and also one thing, the difference between the Avengers and X-Men. It's something that when I got into logistics, that Victor told me a long time ago. Check your ego at the door,
Mhm.
and that's what I feel that the X-Men does.
Yes.
They put their egos aside for the greater good, because they know what they're fighting for is for the better of
everyone.
Yeah,
honestly, I think I think one thing that I got to relearn while I was reading this, because I today read a lot of modern day X-Men, and I'm very well versed in modern day X-Men, but seeing how small this team was at this point, and how much of a family that they truly were. So for the listeners, on this team is just Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine, Colossus, Shadowcat, Kitty, and Nightcrawler.
What about Colossus' little sister?
Ileana. At this time, she's a part of the New Mutants.
Okay.
Who are Magic.
Okay.
She right at this point, a little history lesson too. Chris Claremont, this is his second X-Men graphic novel that he wrote. In Marvel's publication, this is Marvel graphic novel number 4. And Marvel graphic novel number 3 was the New Mutants. And that was Chris Claremont debuting this whole new team of mutants that they live in the mansion, but they don't really hang out with the X-Men, because the thing is that the X-Men, they're the older cats, and the point of view character as a reader when you're reading Chris Claremont's X-Men for a long time, they don't have her, but it's Shadowcat, Kitty. When you read X-Men, you're supposed to feel like you are Kitty. Like you're being introduced to this whole new world and this whole new family, and you're learning how to love everyone in your family and how to speak to everyone in your family, and you're learning how to do that via Kitty in X-Men. And this is yeah.
Well, speaking about the writer, if we could talk about the writer for a minute.
Go ahead.
One of the things I liked, I told you that I like Joe and the way he set himself for the ending.
You're muting yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. The way he set himself with the training module, set himself for the ending. I mean, it's something that I like too, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on the cop.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the way at the ending, and the way he said, it was all done. And I guess the way it was set up was that there was these two cops that were at the rally, and during the rally, they started at the first scene with the cops. They were talking about the game or something going on tonight, or they were there,
Uninterested.
yeah,
They're
in what's
just
Yeah.
going on, and the way he set that up. And then they show him again, and he goes, "What's this guy talking about? Like, is this guy like this guy crazy or what?"
Yeah.
They started questioning the rally, and then and at that, I think there was one more scene with them, and then at the end, when Stryker was going to try to shoot, I forget who was going to try to shoot at.
he was shooting at the X-Men.
Yeah,
But it's also important to know Stryker had already killed someone at this rally before he pointed the gun.
yeah.
he,
So,
he he threw his follower off the podium.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. And then, and the cop ended up like pulling the gun on him, and they say, "What are you doing?" They asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, all I see is a man pointing a gun at a human being."
Yeah.
And that to me, I said, it was several points in the story where it felt like things were getting set up and you didn't notice they were getting set up until
Yeah.
that part of the story hit.
Mhm.
So, like, the cop, you read that part at the end and you go, "Oh, he set that up for us."
Yeah.
You
And
know,
it can go into real life also, that we got to keep in mind that let's go with use present day examples. I mean, when Trump was campaigning out there, like, not everybody there had his ideas or shared his beliefs. I'm sure there's a lot of people there, especially like law enforcement, that were there just merely doing their job. And that we have to keep in mind that when if something happens, they know that if
They have to do
they're
the right
asked to
thing.
do if they're asked to do the right thing, they will do it, regardless of, I mean, and that was a good example of that.
I
Right
think
yeah,
it's a great example, and what you just said, Gabe, is that and what Dad mentioned is that there are two cops
there.
yeah.
there, and only one of them did that.
Yeah.
And I found the spot, Vic. It said that cop shot the Reverend. He said, "Yup," who was about to shoot an unarmed little girl. If
Mhm.
that's the word of God, it sure changed some sense Sunday school.
Exactly.
What about the muties? What about them? They done as much or as little as you clowns. So he didn't even take it as far as saying they're innocent. He just basically said, "I'm doing my job."
Hmm.
Yep.
This man was pointing a gun at a kid, and I shot him. And what about the mutants? Well, they didn't do shit. You didn't do shit. So you guys are useless to me right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, he didn't. He could have decided, well, they did nothing wrong. I'm on their side. No, he put it very very was it middle ground?
Justice is blind
Yeah.
Hmm.
type,
Mhm.
approach.
And then he said, as far as I'm concerned, they're free to go, and good luck to them. They'll need it.
Yeah.
So,
One thing that I wanted to bring up too is that you know this war that Stryker has against the mutants. It's now it's exploitative because of course it's like a pogrom. It's he wants to get rid of mutants. He wanted to commit a genocide that day. Uh, for the listeners, this is he kidnapped Charles Xavier and drugged him and made him do his bidding. He made Professor Xavier kill his children in his mind.
hmm
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's all kinds of fucked up. And at the end of the day, when the X-Men were getting ready to attack, they could feel the psychic power being forced on their minds, their brains turning to mush, and they could still only think about the optics of everything. If they went in there guns blazing and took down Stryker, they would only be proving Stryker right. And they had that in mind the entire time. And then to the point where Stryker points the gun at them in that panel, you guys can see it. The
hmm
X-Men are just standing tall with their chins up. They're not going to attack Stryker, even though he has a gun pointed at them. They just know that if the way I see this panel, every single one of these X-Men could stop that bullet, but they don't because the optics of it. If one of them takes a bullet for mutant kind right now, right here in front of the world, it would be worth it. And some might think that that's an extremist view, of a really extremist passive view on like non-violence, but I think it's so powerful in this book when you see that. And that's why the page turn, page turns in comics are very, very important. When you get that page turn after the hammer, after after Stryker's hammer gets pulled back, and you hear the blam, and then it's not Stryker, and it's the cop, and you're like, yes, the world saw what was going to happen, and the world put its energy in that cop's hand and shot Stryker because it was an injustice what Stryker was going to do.
Mm-hmm. No, I think everything this book said. I mean, I think. Honestly, I'm believing this is now my favorite one that we've read.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to mention too, Cyclops was like ready to kill Xavier.
Oh yeah.
With that plan.
But he knew he would have did it based on his teachings from Xavier, though.
Well,
Like it was a sacrifice.
That's the thing, though, right? Is that they didn't have access to Xavier the entire fight.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I think what some people misconstrued about the X-Men is that as much as Xavier is the leader of the X-Men, Cyclops is the field leader. And he is the one that calls the shots. Yeah, he's the general. He's the one who calls the shots. And maybe one day we will read, some modern day X-Men. But the big takeaway from modern day X-Men is how much Cyclops is willing to protect mutant kind.
Yep.
Not just, of course, he grew up with the ideals from Xavier that mutants and humans can coexist. But unfortunately, Cyclops has lived the reality of that.
And he knows that,
it's a struggle.
Yep.
It's a struggle. Modern day Cyclops, Dad and Gabe, modern day Cyclops is written as a revolutionary. And when you read modern day Cyclops, you see that this is a man since he was 15 years old. Modern day Cyclops, he's around his like 28 or 30. He's the same age as Peter Parker. Since the day he was 14, he has nonstop been told that he will never be anything. He will always be lesser than humans, and that he's a danger to society. And he has the power of a nuke in his head. And people hate him for it, and people hate his people for him. They hate his wife, they hate his kids, they hate everyone involved with him. And he's not taking it. And he's prepared to do everything and anything to stop mutant suffrage. There's a page in Grant Morrison's New X-Men where this one of the Trask kids is using a mutant, and they're torturing him. And Wolverine and Cyclops get there, and they get there a little bit too late. And Wolverine looks at Cyclops. He goes, "Summers, he's being like he's in pain. He's dying." And Cyclops looks at the mutant that's dying, and he uses his optic blast, and he ends his life. That is how dedicated Cyclops is to ending mutant suffrage. He can't even let a mutant suffer to death. He needs to be quick about it. And that scene where him and Wolverine stop Xavier is what I looked at it. I'm like, this is where it started. Cyclops was ready to end because his optic blast would have killed Xavier. That's just the truth. But if he didn't kill Xavier, Wolverine would have, and he gave Wolverine the okay. And that's the thing too, is that Wolverine in these comics, he recognizes the fact. The movies will tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
But Wolverine accepts the fact that Cyclops is the chosen leader of the team.
I just wish the movies would have shared that a little more. But so I looked up some information because, like I said, it interests me a lot. And it was 1982 that this came out.
Okay.
The book served as the primary inspiration of the 2003 film X2. Originally, Magneto was supposed to die in the original draft.
Okay.
Magneto's death was dropped once Adams left here it goes. God Loves Man Killed was initially conceived as a non-canon X-Men story. I don't know what that means, non-canon.
Like, so in the interview with Chris Claremont at the end of this book, he says that, you can't put this book anywhere in like X-Men 202, and then in between 202 and 203, there's God Loves Man Kills. You could read this whenever.
Okay. He said the original first draft script called The Death of Magneto, which was illustrated by Neil Adams before his departure from the project.
Who we remember from the Kree Skrull War.
Yep. which would be the triggered event of the X-Men to begin investigating William Stryker. Magneto's death was dropped once Adams left the project, and the script rewritten into what became the published version. Uh, it was not officially considered canon until 2003, when the second X-Men film, which borrowed heavily from the graphic novel, was released in theaters in a sequel series. God Loves Man Kills 2 was published by Extreme X-Men number 25 to 30.
Oh yeah, I forgot Chris Claremont wrote that.
In the film, this is talk about the film, and it talks about the comparisons. And the reason I found this because I was trying to look it up originally to see how it was received and what was as far as what is it as far as how is it rated in the X-Men world. This specific novel, but unfortunately it didn't pull up.
That's all right. I think I mentioned at the beginning, and I even mentioned it off air. But this book was made so that anyone could get into the X-Men and know what they were about. You didn't have to know anything about, the X-Men. Their history starts when Scott Summers was 15. Like, they were teenagers. And also, importantly, they were 5 white teenagers. And when Chris Claremont got onto the scene in 1974 and started writing the X-Men, he introduced a whole new international team. His new team was a Russian, an African goddess, a mutant who's blue, a Canadian, and a Jewish, a white Jewish girl, and they were a multinational team. And Chris Claremont finally, he was able to take the X-Men to new levels. And, with God Loves Man Kills, you get to see that on full display. I think one of the cool things that I got to see while I was scrolling through here is William Stryker uses Nightcrawler as an example, right? Where he goes, human, you call that human? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Nightcrawler is a devout Catholic. Mm-hmm. And in any story that involves him, he's he struggles with the fact that he's a mutant and he's a product of evolution, and he's also he's also a man of God. He's probably more so a man of God than William Stryker could ever be.
Yeah, I knew the part of man of God. I didn't know he struggled as much. I guess I didn't capture that. But real quick, Victor, if we can talk about we've been talking about Claremont quite a bit. What about Anderson's drawings? What's your guys' thoughts on that?
That's the thing. The story was so freaking good that and then the conversation about it was so good that, there's some visuals and stuff like that. There's nothing that really pops or compared to our other readings. But like I said, the story is just so freaking good that it doesn't matter. Sure. I mean, it's laid out right. It's, you got some good penciling and artwork there, but it just,
it's very old school though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why I asked Victor called me yesterday, and I asked him, I said, when was this written? Because you can tell it's very old school. He said the 80s, and I said, okay, I can tell. So I thought I agree with you. I had to go back, Gabe, a couple of times just to look at but I told you guys this before. When I start reading comic books, sometimes I forget about the pictures.
Yeah.
And I especially this comic book. I don't know if you guys noticed the bubbles. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
This wasn't a page where you read like picture, three words, picture. This was like every little panel had a book.
This was kind of like when we read The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, exactly.
The art. Okay, I will say the art is really nice, right? The penciling is really, really cool, especially on close-ups. There's a lot of detail in these close-ups and shadows, especially when you get to scenes where William Stryker is talking. You get to see the shadows that go over his face, and obviously it's intentional. This man who's in the light of God has shadows going over his face, and it covers more than half of his face. It's very intimate, and it's very deliberate. But also a couple pages before that, you get to see some close-ups of Magneto, and you get to see the wrinkles in his face, and you can see the wrinkles in his face in every panel, even though it's like zoomed out. The art goes hard in this, but it has the same effect as the Dark Knight had, where I was way too into the words that I would look at the art and I'm like, okay, that makes sense with the words that I just read.
And going back, like what you said about William Stryker, one that really pops out well is a scene where you just see his eyes and the shadow around it, but then the what he says, "Thy kingdom come, Lord, Thy will be done
Mm-hmm.
on earth as is in heaven." But like normally with that, you're thinking of a prayer and stuff like that. But in here, you're kind of feeling like, okay, this guy's, it's like a cry for battle, getting
Yeah,
ready for war and stuff like
exactly.
that. And they just captured that pretty well, But I didn't think I had to go back and actually like look at it to, because I was more like in awe about reading than actually
Yeah.
looking at the visuals.
I
You know,
think you mentioned it, Dad, that Neil Adams was on this project, and I never knew that. Do you guys remember that issue of the Kree Scroll War that we read?
yeah.
The Journey Inside of an Android,
Hmm.
Hmm.
where they go inside a vision. Oh
Yeah,
man, I can't imagine what this book would have looked like if Neil Adams drew it.
right.
Yeah, and I do remember that. And then I was like, as I go through this, trying to look, every comic book we've read, we've always had one picture that's kind of like wow, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And this one has so much words in it. Like, there wasn't one panel that didn't have dialogue in it. That I don't think I have one here. And I was trying to look. The best,
I found one, but it's the one that we mentioned earlier. It's the one where Stryker gets shot. That's
Hmm.
oh,
that's like one of the only pages where it's almost like no words.
Yeah.
the only one that I could think of that I liked a lot, and I will tell you, I do like the details behind everything. Even the car that one of the what's it called,
Purifiers.
purifiers was driving. I think it was a Cadillac.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Um,
the limo.
yeah, it was pretty detailed. Like I know that people can't see us, but this picture right here. I mean, look at the way he drew that car.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's real good.
they
Um,
drew automobiles different back in the day.
but the picture that I liked probably the most was this one right here. It's the one with Colossus.
Oh, taking the engine block out of the car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because he knew he knew if they crashed into it, he was gonna demolish the car.
Yep.
yeah.
So I mean but as far as overall the pencils and the drawings on it, I mean they were really good. They were very old school for me.
Mm-hmm.
For me being a rookie reader,
Yep.
they're probably I didn't like Xavier. The drawing of Xavier,
Uh-huh.
I didn't like the look at all. Just because that's not what I'm used to of Xavier. One, he looked really young. Um, you know what? I think this picture is probably my favorite. Now that pay more attention. Yeah, I need to look at the pictures more. But look at this picture. This is actually a really good.
I was just looking at
Yeah.
that, and I was about to mention it. The sequence where they're inside of Xavier's head, and
Yeah,
he's
you see
seeing
Wolverine's
all,
veins.
yeah, and you're seeing all his students come up to him and stab him while
Yeah.
he's crucified on the cross.
Yep.
Besides the fact that I don't like the way Xavier looks, I think that picture's really good.
Yeah.
So as far as the Anderson goes, I think he did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Probably was one of my favorites because I'm more used to the newer styles from the
Mm-hmm.
books we've read. Um,
Oh yeah, like Daniel Acuna from the last book that we
Yeah.
yeah,
read, Avengers Twilight. That's insane to go
Hmm.
from Daniel Acuna to this.
Yeah. I
um,
mean, the artwork is bland a little bit on here. I mean, there.
but it wasn't important.
No, and that's the thing, But I will say what I did like about and going back to anybody could just pick this up and start reading it. But they do give a little background on something describing like I like how they introduced the X-Men. You got Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine,
Yeah, with
Colossus.
Striker's file on them.
Yeah, but it's like the way they do it, like he's reading off like their files, but in a way, it's like introducing the reader to like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
here's the main role players here, like, and I like how they did that though.
Hey,
Yeah.
who was making out with Cyclops at the end?
That's Stevie.
The Stevie.
Yeah, the caretaker. So Stevie is a character that comes out in the New Mutants books.
Okay.
She's the one that actually teaches the kids
Oh, okay.
at Xavier's school because Xavier,
So
he can he teaches them philosophy and stuff like that
So
most of
Gene's
the
not here
time.
yet, right?
No, so at this time, the original X-Men, the original five,
Mm-hmm.
they're off in New York doing X Factor, their own like little like federal government like sanctioned mutant team. And Cyclops was a part of that for a while, but he decided that he didn't want to be like in the government, so he went back to Xavier's. And so at this point, the original five aren't around, and it's just Cyclops and the new roster.
Him and Gene are not together.
They're together. They're just
Oh.
they have a rocky relationship because I think she had died a few years before this or after this.
And
The
I
Phoenix
think
Force.
I think the real victim in this whole X-Men story is Cyclops. I mean, he has a wife. It's a clone. It's not a wife. She dies. She becomes a bird. I mean,
Sometimes
he
he
she's a
can't
clone.
help himself though either though, because
Yeah,
he
no, he's just as bad.
yeah.
he,
I,
he he psychically cheats on his wife when she's back alive in the
yeah.
2000s in Grant Morrison's new X-Men. He cheats on Jean Grey with Emma Frost. And
Gene,
personally, as a Cyclops fan, I think him and Emma Frost are perfect together, and him and Jean Grey is like the high school relationship that you want to keep alive, but nah, like you need to
yeah. Well,
grow up.
Gene messing around with Wolverine's head. I mean, I think Cyclops the real victim in this whole thing.
Well, that's the thing too. That's only in the movies and in the TV shows because there's no chemistry between Wolverine and Jean, and at most in the movies and show they get it at a physical level.
Yeah.
But like there's nothing that Jean has in common with Wolverine. There's nothing that they have. In fact, Wolverine's been alive fucking 5 times longer than Jean has. And that relationship's a little weird. And they actually do talk about it a lot in the books that it's weird that Wolverine has a crush on her like that. And that's why actually um Wolverine's role on the X-Men team is to be the father figure for the orphan kids. So like people like Kitty Pryde, when she moves from Chicago to be part of the X-Men, she doesn't get along with Xavier because she just sees him as like as an authoritative figure, but she does get along with Wolverine because Wolverine, he never got to have his kids. This is way before X-23
Yeah.
and Dakin and all of them.
And then you kind of see that also, him being like in the movie, you saw that with him
With
with
Rogue.
Rogue, but
Mhm.
then in the a little bit in the shows also, you see him with Jubilee as far
Yes.
as that too as well.
Every
You
new
know,
generation of X-Men, like the team, they
yeah,
have a surrogate daughter relationship with Wolverine.
yeah,
And so, like in the 80s, it was Kitty Pryde. In the 90s, it was Jubilee. In the 2000s, it was Armor, Hisako Ichigi.
yeah,
In the 2000s, it's right now, currently, it's back to Rogue.
yeah.
They're back together in the current X-Men book.
And
Uh,
I think it's funny how they just make it so like impossible for. I mean, he does have somewhat of a with his real daughter, like in Logan, but you know,
oh yeah,
like all these other kids, you know, he doesn't have a problem, and maybe because they're not physically his,
yeah,
so that's why it makes it more.
easier for him.
Yeah.
Because his actual kids, X-23 right now is
Mhm,
like 18 years old, and she has the mantle of Wolverine.
mhm,
That's one thing that's cool about Marvel is that they don't they don't entertain the idea that there can't that like if you're gonna call Captain America Sam Wilson, like Sam Wilson Cap, or Steve Rogers Cap, is like no, they're both Captain America. Just
mhm,
call them Captain America. You don't
yeah,
call Miles Morales Spider-Man, Miles Morales Spider-Man. Every time you talk about him, you call him Spider-Man.
mhm,
And for Wolverine's case, his daughter is also the Wolverine, and just like her dad, she's feared
mhm,
in the Marvel universe. And so she's already a grown ass adult, and his son Dakin, he's a little shithead.
yeah,
Well, guys, overall, you guys want to give your thoughts? We already talked about the writer. I think we talked about the writer enough. Not
Mm-hmm.
enough. I mean, I think he did a great job. I think we all agree on that. I look forward to reading more of his stuff. I don't know much about anything else he wrote.
We should definitely check out more Chris Claremont,
yeah,
especially if we hop back into the X-Men.
As far as Anderson goes, I think we all have ups and downs on as far as his drawing. Because I think Victor said he really liked it.
Yeah.
Me and Gabe kind of in the middle of that one. Um, and as far as the X Men story goes, Gabe.
Well, I want to add this.
Hmm.
Okay, like DC, you have like overpowered, you know,
Gods.
basically and whatnot, and X-Men or Marvel breaks it down to like three groups. Like with the Avengers, and then the stuff with like the space. You got like issues on a like what is it, like a god level or something like
Like a
that.
cosmic
But
scale.
yeah, on a cosmic scale. Thank you. And then with the X-Men, it's more of like the overall, like what's going on with the world. But
Yeah.
then Marvel takes it even further, and just with Peter Parker, and just his issues as a person dealing with
Hmm.
his powers and his everyday life and stuff like that. But then they all take it, it's all about trying to find balance with everything. And I mean, Marvel does it so well, and no matter what you're reading, it's somewhat of enjoyable.
Oh
But
yeah.
this one, I mean, I didn't know what I was expecting. I was like, okay, well, this is probably, let me knock it out real quick. I waited until yesterday to start reading it, to be
Hell
honest, and
yeah.
I got it like a month ago. But
Hmm.
I mean, they knocked it out of the park with this, because I mean, look at the conversation we had. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
It was Victor asked me how was he always asks me when I'm reading these,
hmm
is it an easy read or not? This one was very easy for me. Even it had more dialogue than most comic books. It was very easy for me.
Hmm.
It was very interesting. I think the ending, like I said, caught me. Cyclops, it made me more of a Cyclops fan probably than before. Obviously, it's a comic book. I know that people were like, "Oh my god, it's just a comic book character," but I think the dialogue he had at the end made me more of a fan of how he is. If he continued that portrayal that way,
Hmm.
um, the comic book is like I said, it's one that I'm gonna put in my office because I think it's very important. I have four Jokers there that Victor got me a long time ago, and I think I'm gonna put this one on the side of it because it's I think it's a book that a lot of people should read, and it kind of leaves you in it kind of lets you take on your own beliefs on everything else going on in the world right now.
hmm
So I'm glad you brought it to us. I loved it. I think it was a great comic book.
very
Easy
impactful.
easy read. I suggest it to anybody to read. It was really good. Vic.
And yeah.
Oh, sorry, Gabe. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I also love the format of how we did it, and instead of just don't
Going
get
through
me
the
wrong,
story.
yeah, instead of going through the story, just I kind of like this, where we can just talk about, even if we have to go back and forth, but it's, it definitely was, pretty nice.
I kind of think this is
More
why
organic.
comic book review should be like this.
Yeah.
Any
Mhm.
kind of book review. So yeah, I liked it. Vic, your thoughts?
So I agree with you guys. I think this is something that it should be required reading in like at a high school level. When I was in high school, I had this one teacher who was really cool, and she put me on to The Watchmen. I had always watched. I had seen the movie, but I had never read Alan Moore's like actual text before. And this is something that teachers should recommend people read, because not only do you get to put yourselves in the shoes of mutants, because you there's something about watching movies about the civil rights, right? We
hmm
could see about the 60s from the Mexican point of view and from the black point of view. But what if you're not a part of that group, right? Yeah, how do you relate? At the end of the day, you're supposed to rise above that, whether or not you can relate. But for like a kid, for example,
Yeah.
you're supposed to put yourself in their shoes, and it's easy to put yourself in the shoes of a mutant because they could just look just like you. There's only one difference: they have a special like uniqueness about them. And I think this is something that everyone should read. This is something that is really powerful on its own. And I'd also like to mention that, like in today's world, it's timeless. And as Cyclops says at the end, it sucks that it is timeless. But at the end of the day, you got to keep moving forward and living with it. And it's the way that you live with it that determines how the world sees you. At the end of the book, that cop only shoots Stryker because of how boldly the X-Men stood against him when he pointed a gun at them. That cop knew very damn well that any one of those X-Men could have stopped that bullet.
Mm-hmm.
But he stood up and he made the choice. I think, one of the reasons why the ending is so powerful is because it's in Madison Square Garden. And there's people there. We didn't even mention this, but I just get into it real quick. When Stryker turns on the device that, makes Charles Xavier's brain like go after the mutants, a lot of people in Madison Square Garden started having nosebleeds. There's a senator that was there.
Yeah,
There's
I seen that.
the vice president that was there, and even Stryker's own people. And I talked about this at work
Yeah.
with someone. There's someone that works with that lady, the purifier that works with Stryker. She begs Stryker for salvation. Her nose starts bleeding and her head starts hurting. She never knew she was a mutant, or maybe she did. But she didn't want to say because she was fearful. But she looked at Stryker and she asked for forgiveness. And she goes, "If your God is merciful, please, like, I've been by your side." And Stryker looks at her and he goes, "My path is the righteous, and you are no longer on this path." And he throws her off the podium. And I'm not sure if he kills her or breaks her neck, and he's paralyzed. But
that's what I got from there. Like her breaking.
It's a very powerful book, and I think everyone could get something from it. I think that the fact that it was written in the 80s should not throw people off, because it's as timeless as it's ever been in America today. You can easily take a lot of what our president and a lot of what our senators are saying online and to the public. You could replace what they're saying, DEI hires and immigrants. You could replace it with mutants, and you would look at it the same way that you're looking at William Stryker saying what he's saying in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a damn shame that that's the case, but it's how it's always been, unfortunately. And it's just how we go about it afterwards. And I think there's a huge lesson to learn. Obviously, the people who are listening to this, hopefully you have read the book. That's why we do these book clubs, so you could read them and then listen to us talk about them.
I just posted a picture of it, and I tagged you guys on it. Hopefully we get some people to read it beforehand. But I think that all of our thoughts on this is very clear. That it's a book that was written in the 80s but can hit us today.
Yep.
Even though we may have different views on it as far as the intensity of how to take everything and how to view everything may be different, but so does this comic book.
Yes.
So as far as and just to mention a little story real quick. Yesterday when Victor called me and told me, he go, "Did you see why I picked this book?" And I go, "Yeah." And he was telling me some stuff, and and as a father, I get worried because I don't want my son to have to deal with none of this stuff, and I also don't want my son to have to take it the wrong way. So I get worried of how he perceives sometimes. But I also forget as a father that my son is 24 years old, and when you do that, when you forget the intelligence and the experiences that he already has in him. So as I finish reading this book, it's one of those things where you kind of like slap yourself in the face and say, you have to remember he's 24 and he's smart, And I read the rest of this book, and it was like I said, everybody should read this book. And like I said, we may have different feelings as far as immigration, as far as how it's perceived, but we all agree that ignorance and hatred is not the way to answer anything.
Mm-hmm.
And ignorance and hatred is just causing worse from both sides. But mostly, if when you have ignorant people calling people names or trying to influence or trying to be police themselves, or saying, and you got somebody in a restaurant saying, "Speak English. We only speak English in America," and this stuff. All this stuff is ignorant because, honestly, Spanish is already considered a second language in the United States, so that's just ignorance. So this book is just so well done, and I thank Victor for bringing it to us. I think it was great timing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think it was a great book.
I'm glad you guys liked it.
Yeah.
Any last words from you guys? Before I want to bring something to the table with you guys, but I'll get the last words on this comic book.
Not so much. I think I said everything I said. I think just moving forward, if more of a not a request or a suggestion, and it doesn't have to be for the next one, but I wouldn't mind doing some type of crossover. A DC and and Marvel one, and if there is one that's more heavy on DC, and then vice versa, if it's got to be two or something like that, maybe we can like a two-part.
What do you mean? There's books that cross over?
There's an amalgam series that came out in the 90s. That's gonna be hard for you guys to physically get. I think it's hard to get digitally too because the publishing is a little weird. But there's crossovers that I have in mind that aren't necessarily Marvel and DC, but like for instance, remember the Batman versus Predator?
Yeah.
There's a lot of DC crossover books, and we could look into those.
Yeah,
definitely. Okay, Vic, any last words?
Just keep the love in your heart, like Cyclops has at the end. Don't let people ruin your dream and what people say and do. Don't let it affect what is right. That's all I gotta say.
Well said.
Yes, well said. So there's an event coming up in a couple weeks that I texted you guys about yesterday.
Yep.
The release of the new Captain America. I thought it would be fun if we went to go see this movie. I told Victor, me and Victor used to go see every comic book that came out, and when Diago came over to us, we started taking him to go see every comic book. And since Victor moved away, we haven't done that. So I told Victor it'd be cool if we went to go see it just about the same time.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gabe, I'm not putting you to that, but we're gonna go see it on Sunday, and I'm gonna take Diago. And then I told Victor that if he can find a theater out there, then he can go out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it'd be fun if we jump on a podcast, all of us together. And even I was even thinking of bring Diago in there for a couple minutes for he can give a child's point on what he saw.
Yeah.
But then all of us then talk about the movie and do a little bit of a review on the movie and see what our thoughts were in the movie, and then and just kind of put it in the middle between our book club.
Yeah,
I like it. I like the idea.
All right, so we'll go ahead and do that. And Gabe, where can I find you at?
On Facebook at Gabriel Feliciano, on Instagram at Gabe's Picks 22, and on TikTok at Conflay722.
All right, and Vic,
you can find me on Instagram at Victorino _MP4, and then on Twitch at twitch.tv/Vic at Night. And we're not live that often these days, but when I do find time, I am. And you can always find the VODs. They delete after a week, but if you're within the week that I started live streaming, you can still watch them.
All right.
I play a lot of Marvel Rivals, so if you like comic books, you'd like watching me play that. I play Mr. Fantastic, and I'm pretty good at it.
All right. And before I put mine out, I just want to remind everybody that they can go follow my daughter, Vic's sister, Diana Christina, on Instagram, on TikTok and Instagram. She puts a lot
friend of the podcast.
Yes.
She's been on almost every other episode
of the podcast, and her TikTok is at DDEE Christina with a Kristina 0. She's getting quite a bit of a following over there, and support her as well. And my stuff is Mendez Vic on Instagram, and then Ryman Reason _podcast on Instagram is our Instagram, which I say every single month that I'm really going to try to get into more posting, but it's guys' work is kicking our asses. So I'm going to try my best to get back out there and do that. And as far as this goes, this is this month's comic book club. We'll see you next month. Vic's going to give us the book. We'll make sure we post it. We usually do it once a month because we need to order the books because they don't carry graphic novels like they used to. So we look forward to the next book and see what we're going to read next. Everybody stay safe. And like Vic says, support your local comic book store.
Yes, sir.
And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Happy readings.
Yep. See you guys.